was this young girl who lived in this house in the lane that where the youth of the kibbutz used to live, and they had put her WhatsApp messages on the screen. They had printed them out and they'd put it up there. And the kind of fear and the kind of desperation, and this girl who was contacting her family and basically saying that you could see the crescendo of fear, and ultimately finally it was like sheer hopelessness, knowing that you're not going to survive. I can't even explain to you how I felt. And this girl was a very young girl, the age of my children, so it was very personal.
Today, we're talking about two ancient civilizations navigating a dangerous modern world, India and Israel. Joining me is Shefali Vaidya, a prominent Indian author, columnist, and political commentator who visited Israel, including Kibbutz Kfar Aza, one of the communities devastated in the October 7th massacre carried out by Hamas. She described walking through bullet-ridden homes, red markings on doors where human remains were found, and seeing the smiling faces of residents who were slaughtered. She also stood at the Western Wall, reflecting on 3,000 years of Jewish civilization survival. And now Prime Minister Narendra Modi has just completed a major visit to Israel, deepening strategic ties. Shefali, welcome to our show.
Shalom and namaste, Daniel. It's a pleasure to be here, and I'm very, very happy to be a guest on your podcast.
Thank you. Pleasure is ours. So take us back to that morning in Kfar Aza. What was the first thing you saw when you walked in, and how did you feel being in that
You,
place?
Nothing really prepares you for the moment. I mean, obviously, we had all seen the horrible, horrible visuals of the October 7th massacre from our TV screens everywhere. And I was going to Kfar Aza after about 2-3 days in Jerusalem. I had seen the old city. And we knew, I mean, we expected what we were going to see. But having said that, when we actually reached the kibbutz and we saw on one side the stunning normalness, because it was a beautiful day. The kibbutz itself seemed like there were flowers blooming, there were oranges on the vines. It looked very normal on one hand. And then when you actually walked through the kibbutz and you saw the signs of destruction everywhere, you saw the burnt down homes, the charred woodwork everywhere, the signs which basically said that human remains were found in those homes. And there was one particular home where they'd kept everything the way it was the day the whole destruction happened. And that house, it's really, I can't put it in words how I felt, because everything seemed so real. And I could imagine myself the lifestyle of the people living there. They probably just thought it was just a normal morning. Children were playing, probably getting ready for school, families were preparing breakfast. And suddenly, in one day, their world was just turned upside down. And that kind of scale of brutality, that kind of scale of destruction, really, it teaches you that how human beings can be so cruel towards one another. And one of the worst things that when I spoke to some of the members who were still guarding that place, and I spoke to some of the survivors of that massacre as well. And before that, we had gone to the hostage square and we had met people from different kibbutzes who had kept a vigil there. And they were talking about how the people living in those kibbutzes were actually one of those part of the Israeli state, the citizens who most wanted peace. So they are the ones who actually wanted very good relationship with people from Gaza. They employed people from Gaza. They had ID cards. They knew them. It's not like it's a different thing if you if you read about death and destruction, when it's just a number to you. But these were people who knew each other. And that is what really, really shook me. And that is what terrified me, actually. And they talked about how the Hamas terrorists came there through paragliders, and how, because some of them had worked in the kibbutz, they knew exactly the layout of the kibbutz. They know where people stayed. They know where the young people stayed. They knew where the old people stayed, where families stayed. And for 2 days, I think, the kibbutz was basically besieged by Hamas. And I can only imagine the atmosphere of fear, of terror, particularly of families who had small children. And I don't think I'll ever forget this experience in my entire life.
Yeah. Now, you mentioned that there were people that worked in the kibbutz. You think that they would be loyal to the people that they worked for, but instead, even if they were there for many years, they were giving over information. And to hear that is kind of shocking, I guess, to
Yes.
everyone that hears it. Now, you mentioned, charred sofas, bullet-ridden walls, collapsed roofs. Was there a particular house or image that kind of shook you the most out of everything that you saw?
I forget the name of, but there was this young girl who basically lived in this house in the lane that where the youth of the kibbutz used to live, and they had put her WhatsApp messages on the screen. They had printed them out and they'd put it up there.
Wow.
And the kind of fear and the kind of desperation, and this girl who was contacting her family and basically saying that you could see the crescendo of fear, and ultimately finally it was like sheer hopelessness, knowing that you're not going to survive because it's like 3 days or almost 2.5 days of siege that they were facing. It really, I'm actually, I can't even explain to you how I felt. And this girl was a very young girl, the age of my children. So it was very personal, the narrative and the kind of destruction that we saw, and everything was kept the way it was, and the signage on the door which said that human remains were found later and probably much later. It was really harrowing to see that particular house. All houses actually. It was really terrible.
Now, you were already supportive of Israel before your visit. Did
That's
seeing
right.
first did seeing it firsthand deepen or change your perspective about Israel?
See, I see Israel as a great story of resilience. And I have heard about Israel from the time I was a school going student. There was a Marathi book which the title of it is very provocative actually. It says Israel Chhadakadun Balakade, meaning Israel from torture to strength. That will tell you the tone of the book. So I read that book when I was in high school, and I was very impressed with how a country can literally rise from ashes like a phoenix and develop systems, rejuvenate a language, work in extremely hostile environment, develop new technology. It's a great story of resilience. It's a great story of hope. It's a great story of survival against all the odds. So I was already very impressed with the story of Israel, and I have always been wanting to go and see Israel for myself. It was very unfortunate that I managed to go there in January 2024 under such tragic circumstances. But what I saw, and it corroborated my image of Israel. What I saw was great resilience. And that is what I want to talk about, because every Israeli that I spoke to, the wars was still going on then. And everyone I spoke to, whether they were serving IDF personnel, whether they were civic authorities, whether they were students, whether they were teachers who were not participating in the conflict yet, but everybody had some family member, either their brother, sister, son, husband, daughter, somebody was serving. So they were all paying the price, and they were all very stoic. They were doing their duties, whatever they were doing. I remember speaking to one of the curators of the museum in Yad Vashem, and she was going about her duty like it was a normal day. And two of her sons, we got to know later, were serving at the border. This kind of stoicness, this kind of resilience, this kind of, okay, we are at war and every person must do his or her own bit, was exactly the image of Israel that I had in my mind after reading the book. And that the country kind of lived up to that. And that is one story I will always take back with me, the kind of strength of character that you need to be able to do your everyday work, knowing that you don't know when that call is going to come anytime. That kind of stuff. So that is one thing I think all cultures and all countries need to learn from Israel. I think it comes from having suffered so much. I saw three major landmarks or stories in Israel, right? The Kotel, that is the Western Wall, the Yad Vashem, the Holocaust Museum, and Kfar Aza, that is the kibbutz. And all three are actually, they complete the civilizational arc of Israel for me. I wish I did not have to visit Kfar Aza to be able to do that, very honestly. But then I wish the Holocaust also had never happened. But once you see these three things, you understand why Israel thinks the way it does, why national security and national survival is very, very important. Because when you walk through the Yad Vashem and you walk through the museum, makes all of us are familiar with Holocaust. All of us who are, even novice students of history have heard about the Holocaust. We've heard about the concentration camps of Auschwitz or whatever. But it is just a nameless chronicle, right? For us, for people from other countries. But when you visit the Yad Vashem and when you see the Hall of Names and when you see the people who were earlier just nameless statistic for you, they all have faces, they all have pictures, they all have names, they all have stories. And when you see that, it really is like a major jolt to you, and you realize that this happened to people just like you. And that really, really shook me. I also spoke to, there were a bunch of young under training police personnel who were visiting Yad Vashem at the same time that we were visiting. And those are very young kids, probably 20, I guess. They looked very young. So I spoke to them, some of them spoke English. And I could see that even they were not prepared for what they saw. We were outsiders. We were definitely not prepared for what they saw. But even those young Israeli police officers or under training police officers were not prepared. And you could see the shock. You could see the reconciliation. You could see that moment of reckoning in their faces as well. So it's like, it's the memory of annihilation. It's the civilizational pain that basically shapes Israel's understanding of itself. And when you come out of the museum, and it was intentional, obviously. When you enter from one side and you exit from other side, and when you exit out and you see this vast panorama of beautiful Jerusalem of today, it is like you are leaving the bad memory behind and you're looking at hope, you're looking at renewal, you're looking at resurgence. That was, I think, the thought behind building the museum that way. And it does give you that feeling. And then there is a jolt of reality when you realize that the war continues even today, or it did when we had visited Israel.
Yeah, one of the touching moments when Prime Minister Modi was in Israel was when he visited Yad Vashem. It was a very, very touching to see him there and to pay his respects. Speaking of October 7th, did you think that it was just terrorism, or did you think that there was something ideological behind it that, that maybe India also faces?
Yes,
What were your thoughts on that?
ideological. It is definitely ideological. It is not just a random attack, for one thing. It is like the other side does not want Israel to exist. Basically, it's existential threat, right? I think the charter of Hamas basically says that Israel doesn't have a right to exist, and it will not exist because they mention Islam, not me. Hamas does it till Islam annihilates it. And that is something that, India has also been facing. And one thing I find very common to both these civilizations, and you use the word civilization very rightly, both Judaism and Hindus, both India and Israel, are not just nations, they are civilizations. And they are civilizations that have been fighting a common enemy for millennia now. And they have resisted and they've paid the price for it, but they've still survived. Israel has geographically been scattered. The Jewish people have been geographically scattered, but civilizationally they have always been one, regardless of where they have been. And everywhere that they have been scattered, they have kept the memory of the civilization alive. At every Passover, when you end the dinner by saying that next year in Jerusalem, that is a way of basically passing on that civilizational memory, saying that we deserve to exist and we deserve to exist here because it is our ancient homeland. Whereas India has geographically remained together, it has become fragmented, of course, once our civilization extended all the way from Afghanistan to Southeast Asia. Now we are much smaller, but we have geographically existed in the same core that we are today. We have also faced many attacks. We have also faced a lot of destruction, lot of annihilation, simply because the other side does not want us to exist. Exactly the same thing, same thought that they have towards Israel. So in that sense, it's strikingly similar. And just like the Jewish people have never forgotten Jerusalem, they have never forgotten Hakotel, they have never forgotten the temple. Like that, the Hindus too have never given up their claim on our sacred sites, be it Ayodhya, be it Kashi, be it any of those sites where our temples existed, which were destroyed over the past, whatever, 700, 800 years. So, in that sense, we are both civilizations and we are both under siege. And there is a lot of similarity. Just like there are all shades of Jewish people, there are extremely religious Jews, there are secular Jews, there are somewhere in between, there are politically very hawkish Jews, there are peaceful Jews. Just like that, Hindus also come in many shades of saffron. There are very, very religious Hindus, there are very secular Hindus. It's very similar and strikingly similar. That is something that I realized when I went to Israel. And both of our nations share this common thread. It is something that we should nurture, and it is something that we should respect and recognize the similarities. And I think that is what Prime Minister Modi also did when he went to Israel.
Do you believe that Hindus and Jews they uniquely understand what it means to preserve their identity under pressure from enemies that want to convert them or want to kill them? Do you believe that that is one of the things that bonds Jews and Hindus together?
Absolutely. And it is also just like Israel, India is also a nation that is surrounded by hostile nation state, just like Israel is also surrounded by hostile nation state, and large, not all, largely. And Israel is trying to carve out an identity for itself. It is trying to survive, and it has survived against great odds, I must say. And it's the same story about India. Our challenges have been the same. Our beginning as a nation has also been nation state has also been around the same time from 1947 and 1948. So the similarities there are too many for me to count actually. But the biggest similarity is that both of us, both of our people, and both of our civilizations have suffered at the hands of the same enemy, and we continue to do so. And that is a stunning similarity between both the cultures.
What are some other reasons you think that Hindus support Israel so strongly? The people from India support Israel. What are some other reasons you think?
We also fought the same enemy in the sense that the British were partly responsible for the creation of Israel. They were also responsible for the very, very bloody partition that India faced. And the scale of bloodshed in the partition was about the same and about as terrible as the Holocaust. And just like Israel honors the memory of the victims of the Holocaust and has built Holocaust museums in different places to honor the victims of the Holocaust. India also has a museum of partition in Amritsar, which basically tries to honor the memory of the victims of partition. So there are many, many things that we share, and that is why the Indian people, the Hindus of India, they recognize the struggles of Israel because they feel that there is a reflection of the same struggles that we have been facing for hundreds of years. And I think that is why there is a very, very strong undercurrent of sympathy between the two nation states. And I mean, also the attitude of trying to find the solutions. Israel is a place where it doesn't rain that much. So, in order to feed the people, you had to innovate, you had to experiment, you had to develop technological solutions to feed everybody, to basically start agriculture in a very, very arid, dry region. That is also something that India also has been learning, and India has been trying to emulate. So even in the field of technology, even in the field of being self-reliant, there is a lot of similarity between India and Israel.
Now, you've said that India was the only country where Jews were welcomed without persecution. There was no
That's right.
anti-Semitism in India where there was probably in almost every other country. Why was India different in that regard?
Because why was India different? India has traditionally always been welcoming of other cultures as long as they don't impinge on our right to exist. And Jewish people have assimilated very, very well in the Indian society. There are three distinct Jewish communities, Jewish clusters in India, as you might know. Many of them are actually now in Israel. There is a significant number of Jewish people who have chosen to stay back in India and who are very, very happy being in India because they feel that they have never faced persecution before. In fact, one of our army generals, General Jacob, was Jewish in a Hindu majority country, and Jews are such a tiny, teeny minority in India. But that did not stop a very capable soldier from rising to the highest position in the Indian army. He was commanding one of the largest armies in the world, which I think is a statement in itself. And the Jewish communities in India, there was one community which is based in Konkan, that is in Maharashtra. They speak Marathi even when they've shifted to Israel, and I met some of them in Israel. They were very happy to speak to me in Marathi because I also live in Maharashtra. And they talk very fondly about their villages, about their lane in Mumbai, about how they grew up. Then there is a community which is in Cochin, and they are known as the Pardesis, and they have a beautiful synagogue there. Even there is a whole Jewish quarter there, which is still preserved, even though many of the people from there have moved to Israel, but they still come to India. And when India opened the OCI, that is the Overseas Citizenship of India scheme, one of the first people to accept that and to welcome it with very open hearts were actually the Jewish people of Indian origin who are now settled in Israel. So India has never persecuted anybody in all these years. Not Parsis, not Jews. In fact, it is very telling, not Tibetans as well, that every time there is a minority that is persecuted anywhere in the world, they find a home in India. And India has been absorbing people from different cultures for millennia now. It's just that we do not like people impinging on our culture and people trying to convert us. That is the only thing. If anybody wants to come to India and be a part of Indian culture, contribute substantially to Indian culture while not trying to impose their culture on us, that is why would anybody in India have a problem with that? And that is why all minorities, including Zoroastrians, who, I mean, the world's largest number of Zoroastrian people actually live in India. It's a very, very small minority. Similarly, Jewish people, there are beautiful synagogues. There's a very beautiful synagogue in Pune, in the city that we live. And it is respected. It is, most of its employees actually are non-Jewish because there are not enough Jewish people there. And they look after it like it's a place of worship of their own faith, which I find very, very remarkable.
And there are about 200 million Muslims that live in India, correct?
That's right. Yes.
So I was interviewed Yana Mir, who is she's Muslim, but she said that to be a Muslim in India is actually, you feel more free than to be in, for example, Pakistan or somewhere that's Islamic country. Actually, you feel more free in India, which is something that most people might not understand. They might think that you might be persecuted if you live there, but actually it's the opposite, right?
It's absolutely the opposite.
Like I said, you have 200 million Muslims in India. Now, how do you distinguish between extremist ideology and ordinary Muslims that want to coexist in the society?
See, it is basically the proof of the pudding lies in the eating, right? Just like Israel also has a substantial Muslim minority, and I've spoken to some of the Bedouin Arabs who are part of Israel, and they have a totally different perspective towards Israel than the Hamas or the Palestinians. Just like that, there are, and 200 million is a huge number. So no one is saying that every Muslim living in India is, wants to convert people or is a religious fundamentalist. No one is saying that. There are a large number of Muslims who are living very peacefully. And as Yana Mir says, that they are far more secure in India. And you could see that, like in the last 2 days, there have been large-scale peaceful protests in India by the Shia Muslims. But they have been peaceful. They have the right to protest, and our constitution guarantees them. And that is what happened. Compared to that, to what happened in Pakistan. So it's not even the same comparison. It's a ridiculous thing actually to compare India and Pakistan. India is one of the safest countries for all minorities, not just the Muslims, but Christians, Jews, Parsis, Tibetans. Our constitution guarantees them their rights. And for centuries, it's only one particular minority actually who has a problem with it. But other minority, I've never heard the Jewish minority in India talk about persecution. I've never heard the Parsi minority in India talk about persecution. I've never heard the Tibetans or the Buddhists talk about persecution. So How is it that the second largest majority, I wouldn't even call it a minority, 200 million is not a minority. How is it that the second largest majority in India is the one that is always having this persecution complex?
Now, you have this concept of Hindutva
That's
and
right.
Zionism. Now, some
Yes.
people say that they're parallel nationalist movements. Others say they might not be. But what is your assessment on, if there's parallels between the two?
But there are parallels in that sense that Hindutva also talks about the essence of being Hindu. And it talks about everybody who lives in India and who respects the land, the culture, the traditions, and the laws of India is a citizen. There should not be any special concessions for anybody. And there should not be persecution also against anybody. Just like Zionism basically talks primarily about Israel's right to exist. You can have politically different ideas. You can be a practicing Jew, you can be a non practicing Jew. But a Zionist will believe that Israel has a right to exist. Just like that, a Hindutva person basically believes that India is a Hindu majority country. And whatever good points it has today, its acceptance of minorities, its inherent tolerance, is because the Hindus are a majority in India. The day that situation changes, everything will change.
Now, Prime Minister Modi just completed his major visit to Israel. What
Yeah.
does that visit signal right now? What was the reaction in India, and what was the significance of this visit to Israel?
The significance of this visit is that, as I said, civilizationally, India and Israel are on the same side. And we have been cooperating on a lot of things on agriculture, on technology, on defense for many years now. And what Prime Minister Modi did after going to Israel on his second official visit, and he shares a great personal equation with Netanyahu, and that you could see in the body language, that you could see in the general bonhomie that both the leaders had. So, Modi's visit is a very strategic visit to Israel, and it talks about the recognition of Israel's right to exist, Israel's right to defend itself, and how India and Israel can move together in many areas in the future.
Now, Prime Minister Modi addressed the Knesset, and he, like you said,
Yes,
reaffirmed the support for Israel's security. He's only one of, I guess, two leaders that spoke in the Knesset.
that's
What did that signify for the people of India that he was given such an honor? He was also given the Medal of Honor, right? So
that's
I
right.
think it was the first time that was given out,
Yes.
and they
So
were
the
chanting his
overall
name as
reception,
well.
yes.
Go ahead.
The overall reception in India for this visit has been very, very positive, and Indians in general have a positive opinion of Israel, and they're very happy to see. And the feeling is mutual. When I went to Israel, actually, I spoke to a lot of people there, and many of them had heard of Modi. And they thought of him as a very dynamic leader. And I think that kind of mutual respect and admiration, it was very visible in the visuals that we saw with Modi addressing the Knesset, Modi visiting Yad Vashem, Modi enjoying a moment that is beyond politics with Netanyahu as two people, as two good friends. That was very heartening to see. And a lot of people in India were, looking at it very positively and very happy about it.
Now, India has a unique place where it maintains relations with Israel and also Arab states. Do you think it has a
Yes.
unique position as a bridge power over there? How do you see
See,
where India is
India,
positioned?
like like any country in the world, India's foreign policy also prioritizes Indian national interest. And it's a strategic move because a lot of Indian citizens work in the Gulf region, they work in the Middle Eastern countries. And obviously, they have been traditionally great friends of Israel. And international relationships are always changing. They are always about basically maximizing what is the country's national interest before anything else. So India that way has been playing this really very well. It's a great friend of Israel, yes, and there are no bones about it. But it also has a strategic cooperation with the Arabic countries for many, many years now, for many, many decades now. And obviously it values that relationship greatly. And that is what Mr. Modi has been doing wonderfully well. I think he's been trying to keep a balance, and India simply is too big to ignore. in the region. So it has a greater role to play even in the future, I feel.
Oh, Prime Minister Modi changed the tone of India's Israel policy. It was more visibly pro-Israel compared to the previous governments.
That's right.
But there was always some sort of cooperation, but it was
Yes.
more behind the scenes, right? So why do you
Yes.
think
Yes.
that change came about when Prime Minister Modi became in power?
I think the policy itself changed. Even the situation in India has changed significantly since 2014. We are now much more of a assertive nation in terms of our ambitions, in terms of our influence in the global geopolitics. We are no longer officially even keeping up the pretense of non-alignment or trying to, basically shrink ourselves. That is not the India that we are experiencing currently. So it was very obvious that there was cooperation between India and Israel for many decades now in many strategic fields, in technology, in agriculture, in defense. So now India is just, saying that, okay, enough of pretending. Let's accept it for what it is. It's a strategic partnership. It's a very valuable strategic partnership. And let's be upfront about it. We have that confidence. We have that assertiveness now to be able to say that this is what it is.
Now, what do you think are some things that Israel can learn from India? And then maybe we'll go vice versa.
I think both the countries have a very strong common thread running through them, and both of them can learn many things from each other about resilience, about hope, about gratitude, about survival, and also cooperating on strategic things like Israel needs manpower. Israel needs skilled manpower across many sectors now, across construction, technology, science. And Indian people are one of the best people who, contribute positively to any country or any society they go to. So that is one thing that Israel can learn and can cooperate with India on. In fact, I heard about a very touching story. So in the aftermath of October 7th, there are a lot of Indians who are already in Israel working as caretakers for senior citizens, right? And this has been happening for quite some time now. So when the Indian embassy was trying to evacuate its people in the aftermath of October 7th and trying to arrange planes for them to come back to India, a staffer from the Indian embassy told me that there was one Indian person who was looking after a senior citizen in Israel in Jerusalem or Tel Aviv, I don't know. But he apparently told the agency staffer that I cannot come. I am the only one who is taking care of this person. So if you evacuate him with me, only then I will be able to come. Otherwise, I will just stay here and look after him. And this goes well beyond the ken of duty. This is not just a job. This is a relationship that has been built. And this person feels responsible for the Israeli citizen because he's been caring for him. And that is something I think that sort of cooperation could definitely increase going ahead between India and Israel.
Yeah, well, something that I heard after October 7th, obviously they were not bringing in the Palestinian workers, and they
Yeah.
were instead bringing in, Indian
Yes.
workers.
Yes.
Do you think that we can do more of that? I mean, obviously it's for the safety. Obviously, it's better for us to
Yes.
bring in people from India.
Yes, Indian people, yes, absolutely. And Indian workers everywhere in the Western societies where they've gone and assimilated, Indian students, they have always been law abiding. They have always been very diligent workers and they have always contributed very productively to whatever society they have joined. And that is historically been true. So I think Israel, it would be a very sensible decision for Israel to hire more Indians because we are in general very smart, capable people, and we don't have too many troubles with the law anywhere we go.
Maybe one of the other similarities is that we're both democracies.
Yes.
Israel is a democracy in a place where you don't have that many democracies, and
Yes.
you have China next to you.
Yes.
Maybe speak a little bit more about the
Ye-
fact that you have you.
Yes. We are both democracies. We both have something that other countries in the region don't have, which is the complete freedom of press. which is
Mm.
very, very interesting, because even in Israel, as in India, you can criticize a democratically elected government. You can say all sorts of things openly and nobody can persecute you for it. And that is very, very rare in the world anywhere today. And that is something that, I find it very interesting that in a sea of theocracies, in a sea of countries who play only lip service to democracy, Israel and India are like shining beacons of actual democracy, of people's participation, of free press, all those things that you read in civic textbooks about what a good democracy should be about. So this is something
Hmm.
that is definitely common to both the countries, and this is something that needs to be protected. This is needs something that needs to be preserved, even though sometimes I'm sure it happens in Israel as well. When you see a country at war and you see a very hostile editorial in a newspaper, if you are a nationalist, it really rankles. It rankles me too when I see something like this in India. But that is a part and parcel of press freedom, and I wouldn't have it any other way anyway.
Yeah, actually, in Israel, there's a lot of the press is more liberal leaning, left leaning,
Yes.
and
Yes.
they give Prime Minister Netanyahu a hard time,
Yes.
although he does a lot of good, but most of them are going against him. How is it in India with Prime Minister Modi? Does he
It's the
face a
same
lot
thing.
of?
Like,
It's the same thing.
yes, the media, particularly the English language media, has traditionally been pretty hostile. But I wouldn't have that any other way. I mean, press freedom is a
Hmm.
great thing, and in a democracy, you have to have freedom. So that is a good thing, and that should be protected. It's really remarkable that these are two countries which are surrounded by hostile territory almost everywhere, and still they have managed to remain steadfastly democratic. They have managed to remain steadfastly dedicated to democratic values.
Yeah, and both value diversity. As
Yes,
in Israel, we have 2 million Arabs, and we have
yes,
Christians and Muslims, and everybody coexists,
yes,
which is the
yes.
same thing with.
Yes. Also, the many sects in Judaism, right? Like you have the Hasidic, you have the Sephardic, you have
Mhm.
the Ashkenazi. Just like that, even in there is no one shade of Judaism. Just like that, there is no one shade of Hinduism either. We have Shaivas, we have Vaishnavas, we have Shaktas, we have people who pick and choose in between, and all this is okay. Just like it is okay in Judaism, and that is really remarkable. That is true liberalism, actually. The people who talk about
Mhm.
liberalism rarely understand that. So, that is one commonality between both the civilizations.
And, for example, in the United States, also the universities, we have a lot of liberal, left leaning professors in the universities. And that
Yes.
has kind of contributed to the, let's say, for example, anti Semitism or anti Israel, the protests on the campuses and things like that. What is it like in India when it comes to the universities? Do you have the same
It's
type of thing?
not exactly. The Indian Gen Z is by and large, I mean, there are few fringe pockets in some very ultra liberal universities, but by and large, the student population is not radicalized at all. So, something that happened in Nepal will never happen in India, because the Gen Z is still pretty much rooted. They're still pretty much aware of the culture and the cultural ramifications. But what really shocked me was the amount of anti Semitism that is there in the elite universities in America. And that was really, really shocking, because the hate crossed all boundaries. Even when there were hostages that were in Gaza, even then, people did not understand the suffering of hostages. And I saw some students in elite American universities, Ivy League universities, tearing down the posters of the hostages, which said that bring the hostages home. And that really shocked me. It brought me back to a conversation that I had in Israel with a survivor of October 7th. And he was a young boy, probably 22, 23 years old. And he said that his grandfather had survived a concentration camp in Europe and he had come to Israel. And he had always said that no more, that this will never happen again. And he said, when I was hiding against the Hamas terrorists on those 2 days, and it took 2 days for him to be rescued, The two words that kept ringing in his mind was my grandfather had escaped a similar kind of hatred. He had survived a similar kind of hatred, and he had told me that this will never happen again. But this did happen. That is, and it's the same level of anti-Semitism when you go to Yad Vashem and you see how slowly and how gradually Jewish people were dehumanized. It didn't happen one night. Obviously, there was a long process. But ultimately, the kind of anti Semitism and the kind of hatred, open hatred that was shown towards Jewish people was very similar to the hatred and the open hostility shown today and the kind of open anti Semitism today. But Indian youth is not like that by and large. Sure, there are some fringe pockets in some universities, but by and large, it's not like that.
And why do you think that is? Do you think that the way that they're raised at home, perhaps maybe they learned some different types of morals and things like that, or is it just a different
The Indian
society there?
society is very family centric, probably also like
Mhm.
Jewish societies. The mother plays a big role in the upbringing of the child. There is a lot of influence, there's a lot of cultural influence. Many of us live in multi generational households, so the grandparents are always nearby, at least if they don't live in the same household. So there is a lot of cultural influence that is passed on like that. It's not necessarily learnt in schools or studied, but it is something that you've grown up with, the kind of culture, the kind of relationships, the kind of love that you have for your extended family, the kind of religious upbringing. All of that is kind of your lived experience. It is not something that somebody sits you down and teaches you. It is something that you see in your family and it is something that you imbibe. So Indians are very connected to their families, and I think that has acted as a bulwark against this wokeism. I'm not saying that it's not changing. It is changing in some urban pockets, but by and large, and we are a huge country, right? There's a lot of diversity. There's a lot of people in India, so it is very
Mhm.
difficult to make a generalization about India. Anything that you say in India, any statement that you make for India, the opposite of it is equally true in some other part.
Yeah. Yeah. Something that's very interesting is that Israel is a total of 10 million people, which
That's right.
is in India would be one of the small cities, right? It's not
Yeah.
even a dot on the map. But
Yeah.
to have a relationship between a country with 1.4 billion people and 10 million people, it's, a lot of people say, I understand why we would be interested in you. We don't know why you're interested in us, but it's kind of beautiful to see that cooperation between us, even though the sizes are so different. They ever think
That is
about
true. But I think there
how,
are many things that we could learn from Israel as a nation. One is the stoicness and the resilience. And as I remember that moment when I stood in front of the Hakotel, the Western Wall, and I saw people praying, and they have been praying there for generations. Even when the wall was not even in the realm of possibilities, they were praying wherever they were staying. They were thinking that someday they were going to be there. So it is, the wall is the greatest symbol of hope and resilience and of renewal. And to, to that, I think anchors every Zionist that there is hope, that you can overcome. And that is the attitude. That stoicism, I think, is something that many Indians like me, they see it as aspirational. And that is, I think, that one thing that we can learn from the Jewish people or from the Israelis.
did you ever face any, pushback for standing for Israel, for standing for the Jewish people?
Yeah. Oh, the
And
online
how do you
circus is
deal with that?
online circus is always at it. There is pushback for almost everything that I do. So I'm
Mm,
used to it now, and I kind of thrive on it. So it doesn't bother me basically. But there are
mhm.
conversely, there are a huge number of people who are supporting the point of view that I put forward as well, right? There's always two sides. And the support is actually far more overwhelming than the opponents. The opponents are, there's a lot of noise, but that's about it. There's very vicious
Yeah.
noise, but it's just noise.
Yeah, as long as you don't take it personally, it's you let it
Yeah.
go. Like I've been doing a lot of interviews with people from India, and
Yes.
the comments are overwhelmingly positive from people. A lot of people are watching from India, and
Yes.
that is something that's encourages me to do it more because it's fascinating to learn about each other.
That's true.
As we
In
know,
fact, In fact, in the aftermath of October 7th, when we went to Israel, we were talking to the mayor of Jerusalem. And she said that in the aftermath of October 7th, I used to like going on Indian TV as a guest because there would always be 5 other people supporting my point of view, which was very refreshing.
Yeah, yeah. And it's something that the IDF soldiers, after they finish their service, many of them, majority of them, head to India
That's
to
right.
vacation to get their minds
Yes.
off of
Yes.
what. Why do you think that is? It's been going on even before
There were full
Prime
diplomatic
Minister Modi.
relationship restored.
Yes.
Yes, that's right. I think
Yeah.
that is because India, again, as I said, we are a very welcoming culture. We are a very warm people in general. And there is no open hostility or antagonism towards Jews that you might find in Western Europe or even in some parts of America today. So the ordinary Indian people are in general very receptive and very welcoming of people in general, of foreign tourists in general. And that is one thing that probably the Jewish people or the young people of Israel who have just come out of a very rigorous military training find it very welcoming. Nobody really bothers them. They can decompress, they can learn about yoga. Many of them practice meditation, they practice yoga, they experience what it is like to live in small villages in Himachal Pradesh or in Goa. And it's a great place to de stress.
One of the things that Prime Minister Modi mentioned in his Knesset speech was that there's a lot of yoga going on in Israel now, more so than
Yes,
before. And
yes.
Ayurveda, the
Ayurveda, yes. Yes. The
yeah,
science of
and
healing in life.
yeah,
Yes.
healing. Yeah, so he was very proud of that, as a lot of Indians living in Israel now.
Yeah.
I know that he met with Indians while he was there, Indian Israelis. So that's
Yes.
something that was very nice. And
And even the Jewish
also,
mysticism, the concept of Jewish mysticism per se. And if you study about Vedanta, you study about Indian scriptures, you can find similarities, a lot of similarities in between. So it is something that both cultures can give and take, both cultures can learn
mm,
from each other. And
yeah.
Israelis have always been welcome in India, and I see no reason why it should change.
Yeah, Prime Minister Modi mentioned there was some holidays that were very similar. Like we have a holiday coming up,
Yes.
Purim, but for you, I think it's Holi, right? Holi?
That's right. Yes.
Right. So I think it's on the same day. I mean, this year at
Yes.
least, on Tuesday. But
Yes.
uh, yeah, so he said there's a concept of tikkun olam, to healing the world.
Yes. Yes.
So there was a lot of similarities that he spoke about. I was very blown away by
Yes.
the fact that he was able to connect everything.
Even Hanukkah, where you
Hanukkah.
light the candles, it's very usually coincides with Diwali, which is the Indian festival of lights, so to speak. And we also light a lot of lamps, and it is also a festival of hope. It's a festival of triumph of evil, triumph of good over evil. It's very similar actually in many ways. Even the wedding ceremony, I believe the Jewish wedding ceremony happens under a canopy, right? So we have a
Yes.
very similar concept called a mandapam, where the actual rituals take place under that.
It's very fascinating to see
Yeah.
the similarity. Another thing is we when the IDF soldiers, a lot of the countries that they went to after October 7th, they were obviously not treated well. Some of them were
Mhm.
banned because they served. They were in Gaza and this and that. India is one country where you don't have to worry
Yes.
about.
We are also a very safe country, for a country of our diversity, our length and breadth, and our huge geographical expanse. India is one of the safest countries in the world. And I say this as a very proud citizen. There is not that much of violent crime. There is nobody is going to, generally take a gun and shoot at you or whatever. It is a very safe country, even otherwise, for any travel.
Yeah. And one of the people that I was speaking to told me that India is such a big place. If you want a cold weather, you can go there. If
Yes.
you want hot weather, you can go, so you can basically select from where you want to go.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I hope that, one day I can come and visit. Hearing about it makes you want to come. But I want to thank you for speaking with me. I think I learned a lot from our conversation. If there's any, final message that you have or anything that we didn't speak about, you can please,
All I can say is that we are not just nation states. Jewish people and Hindus are custodians of a very, very ancient civilization. And that is why we are natural allies. And that is why I think there is many things that we can learn from each other. And the future is going to be a great collaboration, hopefully.
Yes, looking forward to it. It should only grow stronger and stronger. So thank you for everything, and I wish you all the best with
Thank you so
everything that
much,
you
and
do.
Shalom. Thank you. Thank you for inviting me. Thanks. Bye.
If you have a 401k or an IRA, please listen. Gold is at record highs. What many people don't know is this: you can move part of your retirement money legally and without tax penalties into physical gold you actually own. Alpha Omega Gold helps you do this through a gold IRA. Your gold is real, it is stored safely, it is in your name. Learn more at ao.gold/stand. Alpha Omega Gold is our sponsor, and they proudly stand with Israel.